Eddie Mora is an unemployed and unkempt writer who has been contracted to write a book. Despite his promises to deliver, he is struggling with writer's block, and his lack of progress is frustrating his girlfriend, Lindy, who recently got promoted to editor. During lunch, Lindy returns Eddie's keys and ends their relationship. Feeling dejected, Eddie takes a walk in New York City and unexpectedly meets his former brother-in-law, Vernon, whom he hasn't seen in almost a decade. Vernon, who is working as a consultant for a pharmaceutical company, offers Eddie a new brain-enhancing drug that is set to be released in the market the following year. Eddie takes the pill on his way home and is amazed by its effects. As he reaches his apartment, he meets his landlord's wife, who confronts him about late rent and his lack of success. The drug takes full effect, and Eddie begins to perceive things with unprecedented clarity. He confidently engages in a conversation with the landlord's wife about legal studies, and ends up co-writing her law school paper with her, and that leads to them having sex. Upon returning to his disheveled apartment, Eddie takes notice of the mess and immediately tidies up. He then sits down at his laptop and begins writing. The words flow out of him effortlessly, and he continues writing throughout the night. When he wakes up the next morning, he is back to his regular self, but he has printed out several hundred pages of his book. He takes them to his editor, who initially eyes them with skepticism, but becomes impressed after reading the first 40 pages. Later on, Eddie visits Vernon, who has been badly beaten and refuses to reveal what happened. Vernon gives Eddie a new supply of the brain-enhancing drug, called NZT-48, and asks him to run some errands in exchange for another pill. When Eddie returns to Vernon's apartment, he finds it ransacked and Vernon, dead on the sofa. Eddie calls 911 and waits for the police to arrive. While waiting, he searches for the stash of NZT-48, and finds it along with a large sum of money, and an address book, which he keeps hidden from the authorities. After being released by the police, Eddie takes another pill, and undergoes a physical transformation, getting a haircut, new clothes, and newfound motivation to finish his book in just 4 days. He also becomes a quick learner, mastering piano, card games, fitness, and new languages. He even impresses his new friends with his vast knowledge, and receives a business card from a stockbroker named Kevin Doyle. Eddie is later invited to a lavish party, and takes a beautiful woman and a Maserati as his companions. He even cliff dives from over 100 feet, revealing a side effect of NZT-48, which is, it encourages risks-taking. He has an epiphany about what he wants to do with his life, but realizes he needs a lot of money to achieve it. Eddie Mora embarks on day trading to increase his capital, but realizes he needs more funds quickly. With the help of a cafe owner, he gets a loan from a Russian loan shark named Gennady. The loan comes with a threatening message that Eddie will be harmed if he fails to repay the money. Eddie becomes serious about stock trading and quickly grows his brokerage account to $2 million, attracting job offers and reporters. Kevin Doyle introduces him to the elite entrepreneur Carl Van Loon, who invites Eddie for dinner. Eddie impresses Carl with his knowledge. Carl tests Eddie's skills by giving him a file of different companies, and Eddie deduces that a major merger is imminent. While walking, Eddie experiences an emerging side effect of NZT, which is losing track of time. He uses his knowledge of Bruce Lee movies to fight off muggers in a subway station, and later ends up in a bar where he meets new friends, and hooks up with a blonde woman. The next day, he finds that his can of NZT is nearly empty, and he can't decipher the corporate files anymore. Despite wanting to cancel his meeting with Carl, Kevin convinces him to attend. During their meeting, Carl Van Loon brings up Hank Atwood, Eddie's corporate rival who became successful seemingly out of nowhere 2 years prior. However, while watching TV, Eddie sees a news report about the murder of a blonde woman at a hotel the previous day. Terrified that he may have been involved in her death during one of his blackouts, he excuses himself and goes outside to vomit. Fearing the side effects of NZT, and trying to gain more information, Eddie attempts to find Vernon's other clients by making phone calls, but each one leads to a dead end, with users either dead or hospitalized. By coincidence, his next call rings the phone of the tancoat tough guy who had been spying on him in the park. Eddie realizes the connection, and quickly escapes. He later meets his ex-wife, Melissa, who confesses to have taken NZT as well, but stopped when she discovered that the drug had serious consequences, including death. She learned from Vernon that other users had died, and has been off the drug for 2 years, but her life is now in shambles, as she cannot concentrate for more than 10 minutes. Melissa urges Eddie to wean himself off of the drug slowly, as suddenly at once can kill him. She then walks away, visibly limping. Gennady, the Russian loan shark, demands his money back from Eddie, and takes an NZT pill he finds on the ground, before letting him go. Eddie goes to Lindy's office, confesses everything, and reveals he hid his stash in her house. While Lindy goes to retrieve the stash, she is attacked by the man in the tan coat, and manages to escape with the help of an NZT-fueled plan. Eddie and Lindy have sex, but Lindy decides to leave and wants nothing to do with NZT. Eddie hires bodyguards, and meets with Carl, to broker a major corporate takeover. He has learned how to control his NZT dosage, and orders a tailored suit with hidden compartments for his pills. He also hires a chemist to reverse engineer the drug. During a business lunch, Eddie is confronted by a detective investigating Vernon's death, and the murder of a blonde woman. Eddie hires a good lawyer, and is cleared of any wrongdoing. As the merger nears its conclusion, Carl wants Eddie to stay on, and use his abilities to assess their competition. After finding his hotel room raided, Eddie purchases a secure condo worth $8.5 million. While on the street, he meets the Russian loan shark again. He demands 20 pills from him. Eddie is confident that he will have enough money to deal with Gennady, as he is about to receive $40 million from the Atwood merger. However, when Hank Atwood fails to show up at the office, Eddie and Carl meet with his wife, who reveals that he is in the hospital, and the deal will only close when he gets better. On the street, Eddie notices Mrs. Atwood's limo driver, the man with the tan coat, and realizes that Atwood must also be an NZT user, who has run out of the drug and won't get better. Eddie is then required to stand in an ID lineup at the police station, but Morris Brandt, his lawyer, manages to get him released. However, Carl is suspicious of Eddie's whereabouts, and believes he might be betraying him. Later, in the washroom, Eddie realizes his pills have been stolen, and when he receives a box, he discovers the severed hands of his bodyguards inside. While at his condo, Eddie watches TV and sees Mrs. Atwood and Brandt, who is also Eddie's lawyer. He realizes that Brandt has stolen his pills, but has not given them to Mr. Atwood. As the Russians approach his condo, and tries to forcefully gain access into the apartment with a chainsaw, Eddie remembers where his last NZT pill is located, but loses it as the Russians break in. Gennady injects himself with his last converted NZT pill, and he prepares Eddie for a painful torture session. However, Eddie manages to turn the tables and kill Gennady before fighting off the other two Russian thugs. At the hospital, Hank Atwood dies, and Eddie meets the man with the tan coat in the waiting room, who aids him in searching Brandt's safe for his pills packet, while keeping Brandt tied up on the floor. After a year, Eddie has successfully published his book, and is currently running for the U.S. Senate in New York. In his campaign office, Carl unexpectedly pays him a visit. While their initial exchange is friendly, Carl hints that he knows Eddie's secret to success, and has consequently shut down his NZT laboratory. He offers Eddie an unlimited supply of the drug, in exchange for confidential insider information in the future. Eddie responds with aggression, boasting about his abilities, and claiming that he no longer needs NZT, having achieved permanent enhancement. He pushes Carl away, refusing the offer.